Our ability to have thoughts about thoughts and their impact on human development is clear, but there are aspects of this relationship, particularly in relation to certain subconscious behaviors, that are fascinating. Because while having thoughts about thoughts may seem like an innately conscious activity, there are some developmental behaviors that seem to be metacognitive, occurring at a wholly unconscious level. One of the researchers whose work demonstrates this subconscious metacognitive development is George Vaillant. Vaillant suggested that we go through a sort of metacognitive developmental maturity by showing that there are developmental differences between the various psychological defense mechanisms that were first identified by Dr. Sigmund Freud. These are innate categories of psychological defensive behavior. Vaillant noticed that Freud's defense mechanisms were not arbitrary, but actually followed a developmental pathway based on how well individuals were able to manage conflicts between their cognitive reality and the environmental reality of their situation. Vaillant observed that mature psychological defenses allowed for the holding of two opposing ideas with little to no distortion, whereas less mature defenses involved a distortion of the perceptual experience when confronted with that same information. This ability to hold opposing ideas requires the development of a meta-understanding of the situation. And this meta-understanding allows for more accurate perception of the event. The ability to withstand the emotional discomfort of subjective moments, to execute an abstractly devised and more positive solution to a difficult problem, is the hallmark of a mature thinker. Less mature thinkers do not possess this meta-understanding, and instead, they distort reflections of events to fit their established cognitive paradigms or beliefs. These distortions support the individual in avoiding conflicting situations and issues or ideas that just don't fit into their present conceptual schema. Vaillant felt that a psychologist's chief role would be helping patients identify these distortions in their perception and develop more mature coping mechanisms, bringing a knowledge of these mechanisms out of the subconscious developmental process and into something conscious. Now, this is significant, but the nature of how subconscious these defenses are is actually surprising, because it was also found in hemispheric neglect patients who have had literally a stroke to damage their right hemisphere that has paralyzed them and caused blindness on the left side of their body. However, it's not as simple as just brain damage knocking out function on one side of your body. These patients can no longer adequately process their environment or even the reality of their own paralysis. They simply neglect or fail to realize that there's anything wrong with them, or even that there is a left side of their body at all. It just doesn't occur to them that there is a left side. In these patients, their linguistic left hemisphere has remained intact, so they're able to talk to you about their experiences, and they're able to tell you all kinds of excuses for the things that are happening in the left side of their environment. And this is where it gets really weird, because it's been demonstrated by V.S. Ramachandran, who would simply ask these patients to reach out with their left hand and take his pen. It turns out that the excuses that these patients use to explain their inability to reach out with their paralyzed limb are all seeming to fit those same old Freudian psychological defense mechanisms, suggesting that there are somehow both neurologically programmed and cognitively developmental structures at play here.